Welcome to another deep dive. We're really thrilled you've pulled up a chair to join us today.
Absolutely.
Consider yourself the third person at this table. Whether you are prepping for a meeting or commuting or just taking a mental break to feed your curiosity,
Mm,
we have got something incredibly layered to explore today.
I really do.
You're looking at a classic piece of literature that masquerades as a simple beach read, but it's actually it's a profound study in behavioral psychology. The focus of today's deep dive is, the book name is, a Caribbean mystery novel by Agatha Christie.
And I think we should set the parameters of our mission right out of the gate here. If you are joining us expecting a straightforward linear plot summary of a whodunit, you're going to get so much more than that.
Oh, definitely.
We are not just recounting a fictional sequence of events. We are going to unpack the psychological misdirections, the weaponization of social biases, and the really profound observations on human nature that Christie hides beneath this sunny, palm-fringed surface.
Yeah,
It is a masterclass in how predators use our own assumptions against us.
I love that framing, because when you look at the setting, it is entirely designed to disarm you. We are at the Golden Palm Hotel on the island of St. Honoré in the West Indies.
A literal paradise.
Exactly, an absolute paradise.
Yeah.
Endless sunshine, pristine coral reefs, steel bands playing softly in the evening, guests sipping exotic rum drinks on a golden beach. But okay, let's unpack this. The sources we're working from today, which include textual excerpts, chapter headings, and detailed descriptions of a 1966 Fontana Books edition, they present a striking visual dissonance.
They do, yeah.
That 1966 cover art is described as featuring a creepy, disembodied green face with a staring, bloodshot glass eye, completely surrounded by bright, beautiful, blooming hibiscus flowers.
It's the perfect visual metaphor for the psychological landscape we are about to enter. That cover perfectly captures the juxtaposition of an idyllic, sun-drenched tropical utopia with the darkest, most grotesque elements of the human heart.
Right.
It directly challenges a cognitive bias we all suffer from, which psychologists call the halo effect.
The halo effect, yeah. We tend to assume that beautiful surroundings or beautiful people inherently possess a beautiful moral nature.
Precisely. And Christie drops us into this utopia specifically to rip that assumption away.
And the person she uses to rip that assumption away is our reluctant vacationer, Miss Jane Marple. I want to spend some time on how she ends up in this paradise, because it really sets up the entire thematic conflict. Miss Marple has recently suffered a severe bout of pneumonia.
A terrible illness for someone her age.
Right. And her nephew, Raymond West, who's a very wealthy and, frankly, insufferably condescending modern novelist, decides she needs a cure. In this very lordly, I know what's best for you manner, he ships his elderly aunt off to the Caribbean.
Without really asking what she wants.
Exactly. And her reaction to the ultimate luxury vacation is just fantastic.
She is entirely underwhelmed. In fact, she's bored.
Bored in paradise.
Which is such a brilliant, revealing character detail. She sits there knitting, looking out at the turquoise water, and she resents the fact that the weather is always fine. Every single day is perfect. In her incredibly sharp analytical mind, there are no interesting variations like you would find in the unpredictable English climate.
She actually misses the rigors and the uncomfortableness of her home.
She does. But it isn't just the meteorological monotony that bothers her. It's the lack of visible, meaningful human complexity. Everything in this resort has been too perfectly curated to remove friction.
There is this specific interaction highlighted in our sources between Miss Marple's worldview and her nephew Raymond's worldview that I think is the key to her entire character.
Oh, the pond scum comment.
Yes. Raymond actually has the audacity to compare her quaint village life in St. Mary Mead to scum on a pond.
Yeah.
He essentially tells her she needs to get out and see real life.
Yes, and Miss Marple's counter-argument is legendary. She indignantly points out that if you put that pond scum under a microscope, you will see that it absolutely teems with life.
It's vicious.
It is a vicious, competitive, complex, microscopic ecosystem. What's fascinating here is how Agatha Christie brilliantly establishes Miss Marple's unique superpower through that exact analogy. Raymond, with all his worldly success and his avant-garde literary friends in London, completely misses the point of human nature.
He really does. He thinks, because he writes about supposedly edgy, modern topics, he understands the human condition better than an elderly spinster.
It's arrogant.
It is. The sources mention an incredibly funny moment where Miss Marple is trying to read one of Raymond's modern novels. It's full of unpleasant people doing odd things, and there's a scene where a character is aggressively demanding to know if a 19-year-old girl has had any sexual experience. Raymond thinks his aunt is an ostrich hiding her head in the sand, shocked by his modern prose.
when in reality she has seen things in her quiet parish work that would make Raymond blush.
Exactly.
She doesn't need to travel the globe or engage in international espionage to understand human depravity. She understands it profoundly because she has observed the complex, dark realities of rural village life for decades.
The sources note that she has seen it all. Greed, intense jealousy, emotional manipulation.
Even things like incest and perversion are explicitly mentioned as realities she's deeply aware of. Human nature doesn't change based on the postcode.
It's the microcosm versus the macrocosm.
Yeah.
The village is the microscope. And because her eye is so trained on the microscopic shifts in human behavior, she can't help but continue observing the pond scum at this glamorous hotel.
She just can't turn it off.
No. Which brings us to the catalyst of our mystery, Major Palgrave.
Major Palgrave is a fascinating archetype. He is the quintessential, stereotypical, retired British military man of that era.
Oh yeah, you can just picture him.
He has a purple veiny face, a glass eye, and he spends his entire vacation cornering polite hotel guests to subject them to endless, rambling, incredibly boring stories about his days in Kenya or the Northwest frontier.
He's the guy everyone at the hotel bar tries desperately to avoid. He is a social nuisance.
But Miss Marple doesn't avoid him.
No, she deploys this gentle Victorian charity and sits with him. She has perfected this art of the polite nod, the appropriate, "Oh, really?" while her mind is free to wander.
It's a survival skill.
Totally. And this dynamic, the boring man and the supposedly oblivious old woman, is the backdrop for the most critical scene in the narrative.
Exactly. Palgrave is rambling on, and the topic, as it often does with people who have lived adjacent to violence, drifts to murder. He tells her a convoluted story about a man he once knew who got away with murder.
Specifically, a serial wife killer whose methods were identical to another known case.
Right. And to prove his point, to validate his own boring story, he reaches into his wallet to show Miss Marple a physical snapshot of this very murderer.
Let's really paint this scene, because the tension is palpable here. She is half listening, adjusting her knitting. He is fumbling with his wallet, pulling out this faded photograph, and suddenly he just stops.
Dead in his tracks.
He stops dead mid-sentence. He looks up, but his eye line doesn't meet Miss Marple's. He is looking over her right shoulder.
And his face changes.
His already purple face goes a deeper shade of magenta. He frantically, clumsily stuffs the picture back into his wallet, and in a loud, completely unnatural, booming voice, he suddenly changes the subject to the price of elephant tusks.
It is a textbook physiological panic response. We have to pause and emphasize the why of that reaction. Why the sudden spike in heart rate? Why the frantic change of subject?
Because he saw something.
Because in that exact fraction of a second, Major Palgrave realized that the murderer from the snapshot was standing right there in his direct line of sight.
Just a few feet away.
The person he was just casually gossiping about, the man who got away with killing his wife, was within earshot and perhaps looking right back at him.
And the aftermath is swift and brutal. The very next day, Major Palgrave is found dead in his room.
What a coincidence.
Right. The official medical ruling is high blood pressure. And there's a bottle of blood pressure pills found conveniently on his nightstand to neatly back up that diagnosis. It's a closed case as far as the local authorities are concerned.
But Miss Marple isn't buying it.
No. When Miss Marple hears the news, she starts to think back. She manages to get a look at his belongings, and she realizes the snapshot, the very picture he was about to show her, is missing from his wallet.
Which is the undeniable psychological proof she needs. A man like Palgrave. A man whose entire identity is wrapped up in his stories, and his proof does not simply throw away the climax of his favorite anecdote.
Okay, but I want to push back on this a little bit, playing devil's advocate for the listener. Is it really that definitive? Couldn't the maid have just swept it up by accident if it fell? Or maybe in his panic, he shoved it in a pocket and got lost? Miss Marple instantly assumes murder based on a missing piece of paper. That feels like a massive logical leap for someone who relies on evidence.
It's a fair question, it really is. But it ignores the behavioral baseline Miss Marple has established for Palgrave. Remember the pond scum analogy?
Right.
She understands the taxonomy of a boar. A boar cherishes their props. That photo was his prized possession. Furthermore, she observes the environment. The timing of the death, perfectly coinciding with the panic response she witnessed, combined with the sudden appearance of pills for a condition he never once complained about during his endless monologues about his health.
And he complained about everything else.
Exactly. The statistical probability of all those independent variables aligning naturally is essentially zero.
That makes sense. The sudden appearance of the pills is the overcorrection by the killer. They wanted it to look too perfect.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Christie is forcing us to reflect on our own daily behaviors. How often do we completely tune out the boring people in our lives? The elderly relative, the tedious
You
coworker?
do it all the time.
We do. Miss Marple's only profound regret in this situation is that she wasn't paying closer attention when the Major started his story. She had the key to a murder handed to her on a silver platter, but because the messenger was tedious, she let her focus drift, and a man died because of it.
It's a chilling lesson for anyone listening right now. Pay attention to the boring stories. You never know what vital life or death data is hidden inside the monotony. So, Major Palgrave is dead, the snapshot is gone, and Miss Marple knows definitively that a killer is walking among them in the sunshine.
Hiding in plain sight.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because now she has to reverse engineer that eye line. She has to figure out who is actually standing in the Major's line of sight over her right shoulder at that exact moment. Let's profile this cast of suspects, soaking up the sun with all their dark secrets.
We should start with the most outwardly respectable group, the botanists and birdwatchers.
Sounds thrilling.
Very. We have two married couples who travel everywhere together, Edward and Evelyn Hillingdon and Gregory and Lucky Dyson. On the surface, they are the picture of upper middle class respectability. They are outdoorsy, they study local flora and fauna, and they even write articles for the Royal Horticultural Journal.
On paper, they sound like a boring, nature-loving foursome you'd ignore at the breakfast buffet.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing Christie doesn't just leave it at birdwatching.
Not even close. The psychological dynamic between these four is incredibly toxic. The sources reveal a massive, suppressed scandal that happened in Martinique 4 years prior to this vacation.
Okay, what happened in Martinique?
Gregory Dyson was previously married to a woman named Gail. Gail was apparently delicate, suffered from various ailments, and supposedly had to winter in the Caribbean for her health. Well, Gail died out there under somewhat ambiguous circumstances, and almost immediately, Lucky, who happens to be Gail's cousin, swooped in and became Gregory's second wife.
Which is suspicious enough on its own, the quick replacement by the cousin. But as Miss Marple digs, it gets so much darker than a simple, tasteless, quick remarriage. Later in the text, we get this shocking, raw confession from Evelyn Hillingdon. The veneer of the polite botanist completely shatters.
Yes, Evelyn's confession is a masterpiece of character unraveling. She reveals to Miss Marple that Lucky didn't just opportunistically marry Gregory. Evelyn states flatly that Lucky made Edward Evelyn's own husband copy out a prescription for a specific, dangerous drug.
Whoa.
The implication is staggering. Evelyn believes, and essentially confirms, that Lucky murdered Gail, and she used Edward to procure the means to do it.
Wait, why would Edward do that? Why would a respectable botanist help his friend's wife's cousin commit murder?
Because of the oldest motive in the book, lust and emotional manipulation. Edward was caught in an intense, likely physical infatuation with Lucky. Lucky weaponized his desire to make him an accessory to murder.
That is just wild.
So within this tight-knit foursome of nature lovers, you have a crucible of blackmail, suspected murder, intense codependency, and deep-seated marital betrayal. Evelyn knows her husband helped kill a woman, yet she stays with him and continues to vacation with the instigator.
That is a staggering amount of psychological baggage to drag to a beach resort. It perfectly illustrates Marple's point. The most vicious predators don't look like monsters. They look like people writing articles for a gardening magazine.
Precisely.
Okay, next up in our suspect pool, we have the wealthy tycoon, Mr. Raphael, and his entourage.
Mr. Raphael is one of Christie's most fascinating creations. He is fabulously rich, and physically he is failing. The text describes him as semi-paralyzed, wheelchair-bound, and looking like a desiccated bird of prey.
A desiccated bird of prey. I love that imagery.
It's perfect,
Yeah.
but his mind is absolutely razor-sharp. He is incredibly grumpy, frequently rude, and brutally honest because his wealth and his impending mortality act as a shield. He no longer has to participate in polite society's fictions.
But it's his staff that really warrants scrutiny for the murder. Let's talk about Esther Walters, his devoted secretary. She represents a very specific trope, doesn't she?
She does. She is the classic, overlooked, financially dependent employee. She is a widow, constantly there with her shorthand notebook, absorbing Mr. Raphael's insults with practiced patience.
Just taking it all in.
Taking it in, waiting. But in the world of behavioral analysis, the quiet, overlooked person in the room often has the most motive to change their circumstances. She is waiting for an inheritance. If Palgrave knew something that threatened that inheritance, she has a motive.
And then there is Jackson, Mr. Raphael's personal masseur and valet. And Jackson is waving massive red flags from the start.
He really is.
Miss Marple, in her quiet observations, actually catches Jackson snooping through Mr. Raphael's highly confidential private financial papers in his bungalow.
Exactly. Jackson has a distinctly unscrupulous aura. He is an opportunist. So within this trio, you have a wealthy man who thinks he is a law unto himself, an unscrupulous valet with a motive to steal and blackmail, and a quiet secretary who might have deeply hidden, desperate agendas.
Any one of them could have slipped away to silence a gossiping major. Which brings us to our final suspects, standing right in the center of the resort's social life. The perfect hosts, Tim and Molly Kendall. They are the young, vibrant couple managing the Golden Palm Hotel.
The face of the brand.
Yes. Molly is described as a beautiful, ingenuous blonde in her 20s, and Tim is lean, dark, handsome, and incredibly attentive to all the guests' needs. They are the human embodiment of the hotel's idyllic brand.
But as we've established, Christie wants us to look past the beautiful facade. And the facade of the Kendalls' perfect marriage is cracking in real time.
This is falling apart.
Molly is acting increasingly erratic. She is suffering from terrifying, unexplained nightmares. She is absent-minded. There is a deeply unsettling moment where she talks to Tim about feeling a shadow of the serpent in their idyllic Garden of Eden.
That phrasing is so evocative, the shadow of the serpent. It implies an external evil infiltrating paradise. But the creating sense of dread surrounding her suggests that the evil might be internal. The narrative strongly suggests that her mental health is deteriorating, that she is buckling under the pressure of running this resort, or perhaps hiding a dark secret of her own.
It's a classic misdirection technique. Draw the reader's eye to the most visibly unstable person. With all these simmering secrets, the murderous botanist, the shady valet, the unraveling host, the atmosphere is a powder keg.
And it's only a matter of time before the pressure cooker explodes.
And explode it does.
The peaceful, sun-drenched facade of the Golden Palm is completely shattered when a second body is found. This brings us to the escalation of the plot. Murder in the shadows.
The stakes go way up.
The victim this time is Victoria Johnson, a local St. Honoré girl who works as a maid at the hotel. She is found tragically stabbed to death in the bushes on the hotel grounds.
This is a pivotal moment in the psychological puzzle. We have to ask the forensic question. Why Victoria? She wasn't a wealthy guest with a complicated past. She wasn't killed randomly by a vagrant. In a tight-knit, hierarchical community like a luxury hotel, the staff are the invisible observers.
Right. They are in the rooms when the guests aren't. They see what pills are on the nightstand, what papers are in the trash.
Precisely. Victoria had discovered something vital about Major Palgrave's death. Specifically, she knew that the bottle of blood pressure pills found in his room, the pills that convinced the local police it was a natural death, were planted.
How did she know that?
Because she was the specific maid who cleaned his room every day. She knew exactly what medications he took, and she knew he absolutely did not take blood pressure medication before the night he died.
So she has this piece of explosive information. What does she do with it?
She likely made the fatal error of trying to leverage it. Perhaps she mentioned it to someone she thought was safe, or perhaps she hinted at it to the killer, hoping to extract a little blackmail money to improve her own difficult circumstances.
A fatal miscalculation.
In the brutal economics of murder, that made her liability that had to be liquidated immediately.
The investigation that follows Victoria's murder is an absolute logistical nightmare. You have Inspector Weston and Daventry from the local St. Honoré authorities trying to piece together timelines and alibis.
Which is nearly impossible in that setting.
It is. They run into an impenetrable wall of island culture. As Daventry wryly notes during the investigation, there is no alibi like a steel band.
It's a brilliant observation on crowd dynamics. The murder happened at night during a party on the terrace. The steel band was playing loudly. People were drinking rum, dancing, wandering down to the beach, moving in and out of the shadows.
The lighting is poor.
The atmosphere is chaotic and fluid. Literally any of our suspects could have easily slipped away into the bushes for the 3 minutes required to silence Victoria and then seamlessly rejoin the conga line.
But amidst this chaotic police investigation, a very deliberate, chilling, and highly structured narrative is being constructed behind the scenes. And this is where the psychology gets truly dark. A smear campaign against Molly Kendall kicks into high gear.
Yes. The rumors about Molly's mental instability mutate into accusations of violence. One of the hotel cooks, a man named Enrico, comes forward with a damning, very specific statement to the police.
Right.
He claims that right around the time Victoria must have been murdered, he looked out of the kitchen and saw Molly Kendall walking out into the dark garden carrying a large knife.
Just casually strolling out of her kitchen into the tropical darkness with a murder weapon. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud.
It does, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological warfare at play is terrifying. Someone is actively, maliciously gaslighting Molly and the entire community.
Gaslighting.
Yes, a term derived from the 1938 play where a husband manipulates his wife into believing she is going insane. That is exactly what is happening here. The killer is seeding the environment with false narratives.
They're trying to paint a public picture of a woman who is completely losing her mind, who is detached from reality, and who is capable of unpredictable, fugue state violence.
It's a strategy of isolation. If everyone believes Molly is crazy and dangerous, no one will listen to her if she discovers the truth.
Or worse, no one will question it if she supposedly commits suicide out of guilt. It's terrifying when you realize how vulnerable this beautiful young woman is being made to look. The trap is closing around her.
But thankfully, Molly has a champion, even if she doesn't realize it yet. Miss Marple sees the machinery of the gaslighting. She recognizes the pattern.
But she also recognizes her own limitations. She is an elderly woman in a foreign jurisdiction. The local police are spinning their wheels, distracted by the steel band and the rumors. Miss Marple decides she needs an ally with institutional clout.
And she chooses the absolute most unlikely partner on the entire island. The grumpy, abrasive, incredibly rich Mr. Raphael.
The dynamic between these two is an absolute joy to analyze. It's the ultimate odd couple team-up.
It is brilliant character work by Christie. Initially, Mr. Raphael completely dismisses her. To his hyper-capitalist, results-driven mind, she is just an old pussy who sits around knitting pink wool.
Right, she represents everything he finds useless in society.
But Mr. Raphael didn't get rich by being unobservant. He is a shrewd judge of character, and he quickly realizes that beneath that fluffy, doddering exterior, she has, as he puts it, eyes and ears, and she uses them.
I just love how this alliance functions practically. You have these two elderly people, both physically underestimated and largely written off by everyone around them. The young, beautiful guests see a frail man in a wheelchair and a sweet, slightly confused old lady with her knitting, and they become completely invisible.
They are non-threats.
Exactly.
But intellectually, they are the apex predators of the island. It is a perfect symbiotic relationship. Mr. Raphael provides the capital, he provides the financial muscle, the societal authority, and the sheer abrasive audacity to demand answers and command the local police's attention.
And Miss Marple.
Miss Marple provides the psychological insight, the behavioral profiling, and the strategic mind. She points the weapon, and he pulls the trigger.
And Miss Marple isn't just sitting back in a wicker chair sharing abstract theories. She is actively engaging in some highly proactive, incredibly risky physical sleuthing. Which brings us to one of my absolute favorite anecdotes from the sources, the sabotaged shoe.
Yes, this sequence perfectly encapsulates her tactical genius. Miss Marple suspects that Jackson, the valet, is hiding something critical in Mr. Raphael's bungalow. She needs to spy on him.
But she knows that if she is caught creeping around in the bushes outside a window, it will look incredibly suspicious.
It will blow her cover as the harmless old lady and alert the killer that she is investigating.
So what is her solution? She takes a metal nail file and deliberately forcefully breaks the heel off her own shoe.
It is a stroke of absolute behavioral brilliance. By breaking her own heel, she pre-constructs an airtight, physically verifiable alibi. She then goes to the window to spy.
If she gets caught.
If Jackson hears a twig snap, if he looks out the window and catches her, what will he see? He won't see an investigator. He will see a frail, clumsy, embarrassed old lady who has just taken a nasty tumble because her cheap shoe broke.
Oh dear, my heel simply snapped. How embarrassing. I took a bit of a spill in the dark.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
She takes the very stereotypes that society projects onto her vulnerability, physical clumsiness, cognitive decline, age, and she completely weaponizes them for her own investigative purposes. She uses their bias as her invisibility cloak.
It just goes to show you, never, ever underestimate an old lady with a nail file and a plan. She is ruthless.
Absolutely ruthless.
But despite her brilliance and Mr. Raphael's power, the killer is still operating on their own timeline, under the cover of the island's darkness. Which leads us to the climax of the novel, The Body in the Creek.
The pacing in the text really accelerates here. The psychological dread boils over into physical action. It's nighttime at the Golden Palm. The atmosphere is tense. Suddenly, a frantic, disorganized search is called. Someone is missing from the evening activities.
The guests and the staff are combing the tropical grounds with flashlights, calling out in the dark. Miss Marple, drawn by the commotion, follows the sounds of the search party down toward a creek on the edge of the property.
And then the flashlights hit something in the water.
The grim discovery is made. Lying face down in the shallow creek is a blonde woman. Her body is draped in a distinctive pale green shawl.
It's a scene engineered for maximum emotional devastation. It appears to be the tragic culmination of all those rumors about Molly's mental state. The poor, stressed woman finally cracked and drowned herself or wandered out in a fugue state and fell.
Tim Kendall, playing the role of the devoted, terrified husband, pushes violently through the crowd of onlookers. He sees the green shawl, falls to his knees in the mud, and cries out in agony, "Molly!"
It is the perfect tragic ending to the gaslighting narrative. The husband mourning his broken wife.
But then Christie delivers a twist that completely recontextualizes the entire book. The local police pull the body from the water and turn her over.
And it isn't Molly Kendall.
No. The dead woman in the creek is Lucky Dyson.
Boom! The narrative ground shifts entirely. The reader, along with the crowd, is stunned. But Miss Marple's brain immediately locks onto the behavioral anomaly. This raises an important question, perhaps the single most critical psychological question of the entire plot.
How did Tim Kendall identify his own wife without ever seeing her face?
Exactly. He saw blonde hair and a green shawl, and he instantly, without a second of hesitation, dropped to his knees, weeping for Molly.
So what does this all mean?
Miss Marple, with terrifying clarity, spells it out for Mr. Raphael and the authorities. Tim Kendall's display of grief wasn't a tragic realization, it was a rehearsed performance. He is the murderer.
Wow.
He played the part of the distracted, grieving husband absolutely perfectly for the crowd, but his arrogance caused him to make a fatal error in sequencing. He assumed the body in the creek was Molly because he was the one who put her there, or rather, he thought he did.
Let's synthesize this entire diabolical plot going all the way back to the beginning. Let's look at the timeline. Remember Major Palgrave's snapshot?
The picture of the man who got away with murdering his wife.
That was a snapshot of Tim Kendall. Tim is not a devoted hotelier. He is a predatory serial wife killer. He finds wealthy or insured women, marries them, isolates them in this case, by moving to a remote island, kills them, and inherits their money to fund his lifestyle.
The entire hotel operation is just a hunting ground. When Major Palgrave pulled out that photo and started telling his boring story to Miss Marple, Tim Kendall was the person standing right behind Miss Marple, serving drinks or checking on guests.
He looked over her shoulder, saw his own face in Palgrave's hand, and experienced absolute existential panic.
He knew he had hours, maybe minutes, before Palgrave showed the photo to someone who would recognize him, so he has to improvise. He slips poison into Palgrave's rum punch, he steals the photo from the wallet to remove the evidence, and he plants the blood pressure pills to provide the police with a neat, tidy medical excuse.
But improvisation leaves loose ends. Victoria, the incredibly observant maid, realizes the pills are fake. She knows Palgrave's medical routine. Tim realizes she knows, so he brutally stabs her during the steel band performance, using the noise and the crowd as his alibi.
And all the while, he is orchestrating this incredibly elaborate, cruel gaslighting campaign against his current wife, Molly. He's secretly putting hallucinogenic or sleep-altering drugs in her cosmetics to give her those terrifying nightmares.
He's whispering rumors to the staff about her erratic behavior. He is likely the one who made sure Enrico the cook saw a blonde woman, probably Tim himself in a wig, or Lucky in the shawl walking out with a knife.
It is a masterclass in narrative control. He is building an airtight public consensus that his wife is going completely insane. His goal is to create a scenario where, when he eventually murders her, the police and the guests will collectively sigh and say, how tragic, but not surprising. She completely lost her mind and threw herself in the creek.
It's so utterly cold-blooded, it turns my stomach. So on the night of the climax, he decides it's time to execute the final phase. He goes out into the dark garden. He sees a blonde woman wearing a pale green shawl, Molly's specific shawl.
He attacks her from behind, drowns her in the creek, and quickly walks away to establish his alibi with the search party.
But in the chaotic darkness of the tropical night, his precision failed him. He made a massive error in target identification. It wasn't his wife. It was Lucky Dyson.
Lucky just happened to be blonde, and she had perhaps borrowed Molly's shawl because it was chilly, Or she was wearing something functionally identical while sneaking out for one of her own midnight romantic rendezvous.
Kim's reaction at the creek crying Molly before ever seeing the face of the corpse was the ultimate undeniable tell. As Miss Marple points out, he didn't look at her face because he knew it was his wife. He had just drowned her.
The mask of the charming, attentive, perfect host slipped just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough for Miss Marple, with her trained eye for human depravity, to see the monster underneath.
It is a phenomenal resolution. It ties together the physical clues, the missing photo, the pills with the psychological clues, the gaslighting, the premature grief. It reveals the true danger was never the exotic setting or the complicated botanist, but the smiling man pouring your coffee.
It really is brilliant writing.
Wow. It really takes my breath away how Christie weaves all these disparate threads together into such a tight psychological snare. And it brings us to our final section, themes and broader implications. Because there's some really profound, timeless ideas running through this book that elevate it above a standard puzzle.
Let's start with the concept of the evil eye.
Yes, this is a fascinating motif that Christie threads throughout the narrative. In our sources, we have a character named Senora de Caspero. She is a glamorous Venezuelan guest who is highly superstitious.
Extremely superstitious.
She looks at Major Palgrave with his veiny face and his unfortunate staring glass eye, and she genuinely, culturally believes that he literally possesses the evil eye. She actually makes the sign of the horns with her hands to ward off his bad luck whenever he looks in her direction. She blames his mere presence for the dark cloud that seems to hang over the hotel.
But the irony Christie employs here is just delicious. Palgrave didn't have the evil eye. He wasn't a magical conduit for bad luck. His glass eye was just a tragic, mundane medical reality from his youth.
But his eye did accidentally witness true evil. He looked at the snapshot, and he looked at Tim Kendall.
Exactly. It's a brilliant subversion of the Gothic trope. The real evil eye on the island wasn't a superstitious curse carried by an ugly old man. It was the chilling, calculating, sociopathic gaze of Tim Kendall observing his victims, assessing their vulnerabilities, and planning their demise while smiling at them.
People are so busy looking for mystical or obvious, ugly signs of evil that they completely miss the handsome, well-dressed sociopath standing right next to them.
Which ties directly into Miss Marple's core philosophy about the universality of human nature, right back to the pond scum.
Right. As we discussed at the very beginning, she was initially bored because everything seemed too beautiful, too different from her gritty village life.
Well.
But by the end of the narrative, her thesis is violently proven correct. Whether you are in a quaint, rainy, gossipy English village like St. Mary Mead or a glamorous, exclusive, sun-drenched Caribbean resort, human desires are exactly the same.
The geography changed.
The outfits change, cocktails change.
But the core psychological drivers of human behavior, greed, lust, self-preservation, jealousy, cruelty, remain absolutely identical. You cannot outrun the human condition by buying a plane ticket.
It's a direct challenge to the listener. We so often fall into the trap of thinking that changing our geography will change our reality. We go on vacation to escape it all. We assume that a luxury resort, shielded by wealth and beauty, is somehow insulated from the darkness of the real world.
But as Agatha Christie proves so eloquently, we carry our human nature with us wherever we go. The scum on the pond exists in the crystal clear waters of the Caribbean Sea just as surely as it does in a murky English duck pond.
It's the ultimate reality check. A beautiful beach doesn't make a beautiful soul. Well, what an incredible layered journey this has been. We started with a slightly bored elderly spinster sitting on a beach, knitting pink wool and half listening to a rambling story, and ended with the complete unraveling of a ruthless, gaslighting serial killer.
It just goes to prove that keen observation, a deep, unflinching understanding of human psychology, and perhaps a strategically wielded nail file are the greatest weapons one can possess against the predators of the world.
And this brings us back to you, the learner listening to this deep dive. The practical application of Miss Marple's wisdom is something you can take directly into your daily life.
The next time you are sitting in a seemingly endless, boring meeting, or you find yourself trapped at a social event, listening to someone ramble on and on, resist the urge to completely tune them out.
Pay attention to the undercurrents.
Look at the reactions of the people around you. Look closely at the scum on the pond of your own environment. You never, ever know what crucial piece of data you might extract if you just keep your eyes and ears open to the mundane.
I absolutely love that takeaway. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on after this deep dive ends. We have spent an hour discussing how Tim Kendall wore the flawless, uncrackable mask of the perfect, charming, attentive host. He used that charm and that perfectly curated, beautiful environment to hide a monster.
He used the beauty of paradise to manipulate everyone's perception of his wife's sanity.
It really leaves you wondering, in your own life, in your own idyllic resorts and safe spaces, whether that is your corporate workplace, your tight-knit social circle, or your local community who is currently controlling the narrative. And more importantly, what truths are you failing to see right in front of you simply because you were too distracted by the sunshine? Thank you so much for joining us at the table today. Keep your eyes open, keep your mind sharp, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.